Hi, this is Dayna Linton for Novels Alive TV, and I'm with Julie Kramer today. How are you?
I'm just great, Dayna.
Well, I am looking at, you've got a national bestseller here, and this was your first book, was it not?
Right. Stalking Susan was last year's RT Best First Mystery Award winner.
That's really saying something. I mean, this is a big crowd, and that's a lot of people to be in that mix and to win that.
Right, and I write novels that are set in the desperate world of television news because I'm a career television news producer and worked in investigative stories for many years. So I have a lot of content and a lot of material. And in that particular one, the concept is my TV reporter discovers a serial killer targeting women named Susan.
I'm glad my name's not Susan.
Well, it was nothing personal, but it was actually inspired by some cold cases that I covered years ago in St. Paul. And 25 years later, they're still unsolved. But publicity from the book has drawn more attention to them, and the local cold case unit re-examined them and was able to use some new forensics on the old evidence. And the good news that they had to report was that there was not a serial killer targeting a woman named Susan. Instead, each of the women there had their own killer. So two people have gotten away with murder for 25 years, but now that they have DNA, they're closer to solving those cases than they've ever been. And we'll see what happens there.
How cool is that? I mean, to be able to get that interest in something that you think no one's going to even care about. For the families, that must have been a big deal too.
Well, you know, they have had no objections to my fictionalizing anything that happened there. And then in my second book, I did want to write the same book twice, but it is a series, it involves the same characters, and here I kind of address how newsrooms decide which missing people get publicity and which ones don't, because that's sort of a controversial question. My TV reporter heroine answers a want ad reading wedding dress for sale, never worn. And she's pulled into a dangerous missing person case when she finds a jilted bride who's not sure whether her groom got cold feet or is a cold case himself because he disappeared the night before their wedding.
I think you know how to do sound bites really well. Well, that's awesome.
Well, Dayna, I've interviewed hundreds of people in my career, many of them on the best or worst days of their lives. And I think that has helped me develop an ear for dialogue.
I would imagine so. And to deal with missing persons, I know I like that. Not without a trace. There's that one that's the Cold Case Files. I love watching that show and seeing how things are figured out. And have you seen cases before that were cold cases being solved?
Yeah, because a lot of the forensic evidence wasn't available back when those things happened. But in homicide cases, that is preserved, that is saved, and years later, back at the time these murders happened, you needed large samples of DNA in order to do any kind of a match, and now you needed a pinprick. And so they were able to go back, and while there wasn't enough back then, there was now. And so they were able to use the new technology that is available for crime fighting.
Well, I would imagine for family members, not knowing what happened to your loved one, that has to be so hauntingly difficult to have some closure would make it so much better for them. And
as journalists, we like to have stories that have endings as well. We do not like ambiguous endings.
The open-ended, it just doesn't work.
Right. But it's, you know, the public keeps tuning in because they want to see how the story ends. They want to see, you know, a murder solved, a missing person solved, justice, yes.
I think that's a really big thing. Now, you were telling me about your third book coming out, and I'm really interested in this one as well. And
it's called Silencing Sam, and it comes out June 22nd. And in that one, I kind of try to explore America's fascination with gossip. And right now, we're seeing newsrooms having to cover stories. Mainstream media is really struggling. There's been lots of cuts, we're trying to figure out what the public wants. And news organizations are covering Tiger Woods and John Edwards and a lot of stories in ways they might not have necessarily before. And in my third book, Silencing Sam, I explore that fine line between news and gossip. And my TV reporter heroine has a public disagreement with a local gossip columnist and ends up throwing a drink in his face. And when he's found dead a few days later, she has to secretly investigate a case in which she's the prime suspect. And amid homicide, she discovers news and gossip have more in common than she ever imagined.
And when we were talking about that last night, I thought, oh, I really, really want to read this book because you see it all the time. I know just even tuning into my local news, I sit there and think, how does that qualify as news? That is just pure gossip in my opinion.
Well, part of it is you've got this 24/7 thing going on with Twittering, with blogging, where people are getting information labeled as news from so many different sources. So often, it used to be you spent the day talking to people, figuring out what the facts were, figuring out what the stories were, and then telling them. But here, things are being reported constantly, and they may or may not be
True.
the end game.
Yeah, and that's what bothers me. And I have to admit, I love this site called Gossip Cop because I can find out something and I go to this site and I find out, okay, how much truth is there? And they have this like sliding scale type of thing. And I like knowing that. And there's Snopes, you know, when you see an email and it, you know, gets you really fired up, this happened or that happened, I go to this Snopes.com and find out, okay, how true is it? And I mean, and these are things that are ending up on our news stations. They didn't even do due diligence to find out whether they're true or not.
Well, see, if it's news, you have some responsibility to find out whether it's true or not. If it's gossip, the only criteria is that people are talking about it, not whether it's true or not, and that's a whole different ballgame.
But I think a lot of people get hurt by having news reported as news when it's not really news. It's salacious gossip.
Anyway, I explored some of those issues in Silencing Sam, and it was a very fun book to write.
Oh, I bet it was. And I would be willing to bet, and I don't know this for sure, is it red?
It is red. Oh, Dana, you are
So
good.
good. The 3 primary colors. Well, I am looking forward to getting this series from you.
All right.
Really seriously, and thank you so much for joining us. We
All right,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.